Hi, I'm Joe Dalton and welcome to Breakthrough Brands, the show that tells how Ireland's entrepreneurial DNA is rebooting the country one successful startup at a time. In this series, we'll demystify the process of starting up your own enterprise and growing it into a successful business by sharing the inspirational, educational, real-life experience of ordinary Irish business people. We talk to entrepreneurs who have taken control of their own destiny by doing what they love.
Ray Hinds is the founder and CEO on Systems Design Software Limited, which he set up with his two brothers, Walter and Paul Hinds. Specialising in supplying dealer management systems into the automotive industry, the software Autoview has over 400 systems installed between Ireland and the UK, with thousands of people using it on a daily basis.
Ray, how are you keeping?
I'm very well, Joe. Long time no see.
A long time no see indeed. All the way up from Cork.
I did all the way by.
All the way by. And you're coming up for there's the Christmas celebrations.
Yes, we do this annually.
And
we alternate Cork and Dublin's turn this time.
Or the UK? Did the UK branch come over?
We never do the UK. They come over to either Cork or Dublin.
And how many people are employed in total?
Oh, we're touching 35.
Wow. So it's a growing company.
It is, yeah.
It is indeed. Ray, tell me, you specialise in the automotive industry. Where did the business start with yourselves before you got into the motor industry?
Well, I'm an electrical engineer. I qualified in UCC in 78, and I've worked for an American firm called MeasureX, and they specialised in process control. So I toured around Europe as a European troubleshooter, addressing software control systems to control the quality of paper making and plastics.
Okay.
And at the same time, I have two brothers in the business with me today, Walter and Paul. And Walter also is an electrical engineer, and he worked for a UK-based firm called International Computers Limited, who were eventually bought out by Siemens Nixdorf. And he worked as a programmer, systems analyst, salesman. And then a younger brother, Paul, who studied chemistry, decided to work for Burroughs, who were an aggressive American firm. I think they're now defunct. And he worked as a salesman for them. And in the early 80s, microcomputers just started. And everybody thought they were toys. But we knew they were here to stay.
Yeah.
And because we had the ability to write software, we always felt the future was in software. So we chucked in our jobs, got into an office together in Cork, and we started to write software on these microcomputers. And we actually developed typical distribution systems. So somebody who would have a stock holding might require sales orders, purchase orders, stock control, invoicing, which is now referred to as ERP systems.
Yeah, that's right.
And when we set up business, the country was going broken in the 80s. So we started to spread our field. So we travelled throughout Ireland. So we sold systems to painters, bakers, distributors, car dealers, workshop outfits, etc.
Hotels as well.
We had hotels for a good while. That was great fun because most of the hotels were going bust. So you put your system in, but you mightn't get paid.
Yeah.
So we decided, after much ado, that we really couldn't continue to be an answer to all. So we started to look for a niche market, and we thought ERP was just too big a challenge because at the time you had a company called Navision who were kickstarting, who are now owned by Microsoft. You had SAP playing, you had Sage, and we reckoned that's going to be too big. And at the time we had picked up a couple of customers who had workshop systems, and there was a German firm who had a product called Auto Plus, and they had 40 installations in car dealerships in Ireland. But that product was written in the 60s and falling apart, and they didn't seem to have any interest in doing anything with it. And because we had a workshop system, we said, let's try and get some of this business. As it turned out, we took all 40 dealers over a period of 3 years. And then we just developed the software from there, and so we became a niche player in what's referred to as a DMS market, a dealer management system.
It's interesting because dealer management systems are now the lifeblood of many dealerships in Ireland and England, well across the world, and it's a very competitive market as well. And you were right in picking the niche market because, if you're trying to sell to all, you sell nothing at all on it. And in the early days when you were developing the software and you were going out there, how did you feel that you're kind of, okay, we've picked this niche, we've got the 40 dealers, we're doing well? When did you realise we do have this business? This is something that's going to last us a lifetime.
Well, we had another opportunity at the time, which was there was only really one or two other players in the marketplace in Ireland, except they were exceptionally pricey. So we have always adopted a policy of being lean and mean and low costs to the end user. So we saw an opportunity to go into small to medium-sized dealers who were paying exorbitant costs just for their dealer management system, which is an essential part of their business, because really the motor business is very complex. You typically have 3 departments, and how do you know what margins you're getting in each department? And then you've got all the demands from the franchises where you've got to integrate with their products, warranty reclaims, etc. So we saw the opportunity to take some of the bigger players, smaller customers, and then we realised, right, now we have something. And as a result, we decided we'd try and get into the UK.
Yeah.
And that opened up doors for us. So we went into the UK by getting into Northern Ireland first, and then
stepping
to
over,
hop across to the UK.
Yeah. Just explain to people as well what a dealer management system is. It's
an accounting system specialised in each department. So if you take your typical car dealership, what do? They buy and sell cars, they repair vehicles, they do all the warranty work on vehicles, and they sell parts to other dealers. So they effectively have 3 different departments. But as well as that, particularly now today, the manufacturers demand so much information from your car dealership today. So the accounting must satisfy manufacturer standards. So if you take your typical car sales department, how much margin do they really make? You don't really know that until you follow all the legs of the deal, and you could typically have 6 deals in a leg. Now that's referred to as long washout. Most dealers say only work with short washout, but at the end of the day, you still need to know what did you ultimately make per deal.
Yeah.
So you'd have, on the sales side, you'd also have CRM, customer relationship. So you get a lead. Today, a lot of the manufacturers provide leads to the dealers over the web. So our systems would be sitting there listening, picking up the leads, confirming to the manufacturer we've picked up the leads, allowing a brand manager to distribute the leads to a salesman and follow that lead right through to the point of either sale or no sale.
And then you have the likes of health check in the service department as well, and flowing in through into the parts. So could you describe a dealer management system as the blood that flows through the veins of a dealership, keeping it in check to see what's going on at all times?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably it's the people who are the blood, it's the staff who are the blood.
Yeah, okay.
The system will aid them to optimise their position, monitor their position, help them with their efficiencies.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, like any business, it's down to people.
Well, that's true. But also with the dealerships as well, margins are getting tight. You know, the manufacturers are squeezing the dealers, and we know that companies like yourselves, other companies of which we won't mention, are quite expensive to run.
Yes.
So how are you acting on this as well?
Well, number one, I did mention to you earlier, we're much, much cheaper.
Yes.
Right? So if you take our greatest competitor, we're probably less than half their price. In the UK, we might have, there would be another competitor who might be 2/3 of their price, right? So the whole software business, Joe, has changed. It's now presented as software as a service.
Yeah.
So in the old days, we might sell a system for 20 or 30,000 and then get a support annual charge of maybe 5,000. Now it's gone the other way, where no, you don't have a capital payment apart from training. What you now have is, right, just sign a lease here effectively for 3 years and you rent your software effectively. But the net result is your costs, your charges are much, much higher. So instead of getting an annual return or a recurring fee of 5,000, you know, I might be getting 10,000.
Yeah,
but you do miss that capital sum at the same time.
That helps that capital as well with all the other things that are going on in the company as well.
It's a very, very expensive business to be in.
Yes, I think everyone that comes into the show tells us that the business they're in is very expensive. It's a fact on it. So tell me as well, Ray, with yourselves, have you been working with Enterprise Ireland, or has...
We did it a number of years ago.
Okay.
And they were very helpful, I'd have to say. And we did fairly well out of them, and they were very supportive. But unfortunately, we didn't launch ourselves as quickly into the UK market as we would have liked, and we got caught between two products. So Enterprise Ireland really wanted you to recruit more people, and at the time, during the Celtic Tiger days, which is when they helped us, we had a serious challenge, which was holding on to staff. So if you're a small organisation, holding off to good staff is very difficult. And at the time, people's salaries were ramping up every single month. So we started then to look to outsource our software development, or some of it. We still have a development centre in Cork, but we now outsource work to India, where the quality of the work is pretty good. We've good working relationships with the team out there. And so from Enterprise Ireland's point of view, we might have been a disappointment to them because we didn't recruit just as many as they might have.
The cards that were dealt on the table at the time, really, on it. We're just going to take a short break. This show was sponsored by Harris Myers, your sales and marketing agency, helping you develop a better sales and marketing pipeline. Ray, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I know that you just spoke about yourselves and the business there, but there's something. Tell me, what's the dealers? What are the dealers saying to you at the moment, or what's the feeling from the dealers with the manufacturers getting more involved in knowing their business, through these KPIs and interfaces that they want all the dealers to have?
Now, I'll have to be diplomatic in answering that question, Joe.
Of course you do, because you work with both of them.
I do a lot of work for the manufacturers as well, and some of the manufacturers are good to me. So, however, I do sit between the dealer and the manufacturer, and we would claim that we have a good working relationship with our customers and the manufacturers. However, yes, the manufacturers are quite demanding, particularly the leading brands. Now, they've also helped the Irish dealer to bring their business up to a much, much better standard, where they've a better understanding of their business. But the margins are being squeezed.
Yeah.
So dealers are complaining. They're unhappy with their margins, and they find that the extra costs they're exposed to in dealing with the manufacturers, they find that quite hurtful in their pockets.
Yeah.
So your dealer today, in my view, your typical small dealer today is probably not as a happy camper as he would have been 10 years ago.
But there's the question. Is there going to be a small dealer, or are they going to be just all whipped up by groups because of the margins? And the reason I say it, you speak to dealers and you speak to the sales guys, and they're going, I'm making £50 a car, and everyone outside the automotive industry thinks it's glamorous. You're selling something for 20 grand, and the profit is like if you were buying a TV or a washing machine. There could be 40-50% profit, and it's not that for the dealers. So. Back to the question is, will there be small dealers, or will there be all just eventually groups controlled by the manufacturers?
I don't think the manufacturers will control them ultimately. If you look at the UK and you see what takes place over there, you've got some very, very large groups, like take the Pendragon Group, who announced during the week that they were scaling back their business. So they've cut off the US business. They're getting rid of their high-end brands like Jaguars, Mercs, BMWs. They're getting out of that sector because of the margins, right? And they, at their peak, would have had 600 dealerships.
Oh, they were huge, yeah. They were in the top 10, weren't they?
Yeah, but they're struggling, right? So, and then if you said to yourself, well, if you look at somebody driving around Wales or Scotland, or driving around the west of Ireland, or down by Kerry,
close my eyes and pretend.
Yes. Well, the group dealers are not going to go down there.
No, they're not.
The smaller dealer will always exist. And the interesting thing too, actually, is if you look at the States, you don't get big dealer groups in the States.
No,
a
you
lot of them
don't,
are family businesses.
Family run, yeah.
So I don't think it's as predictable.
Family run in the States, yes. However, the population around the family run dealer would be quite big. It's, you know, we hear the argument here is, oh, you know, Birmingham, there's 4.5 million people in Birmingham and there's 4.5 million people in Ireland. What's the problem? And I say to people, the problem is that the 4.5 million people in Birmingham are all very close to each other. It's a distribution between, you know, hundreds of miles. So looking at the groups, I know that the likes of Joe Duffy, I know there's other groups like Spirit are buying up dealers left, right and centre in the Dublin area, and then down in Cork we have, is it Cleary's, yeah, and are purchasing as well. So are they affecting the smaller dealer, and are people driving to those places to buy because of they recognise their name?
Yeah, certainly it's harder for a smaller dealer to survive in the cities, particularly Dublin, right? So yes, there'll be a big play out in Dublin. If you take Joe Duffy, you take the Windsor Group,
Keane, and
take Spirit, and take Frank Keane,
MSL, and
they're all queuing to take business off each other effectively, right? So the smaller dealer, and I've lost some clients in the last 2-3 years by being purchased by bigger groups, you know. So that will certainly continue.
Yeah.
However, bear in mind one thing. The motor sector margins are still very thin. They're like construction. You're talking about 2%. So,
wow,
a big mistake could really damage you.
Yeah, that's really bad, isn't it? I don't know what to say about that. Oh, no. And then with the manufacturers, are the manufacturers then? You said that you're working with the manufacturers. Are they helping the dealers? You know, there's a lot of dealers will be always negative about the manufacturer, but they are the manufacturer's shop, the shop window. What are the manufacturers doing to help the dealers?
Well, if you look at Ireland,
yeah,
the quality of your car dealership today is way ahead of where it was 20 years ago.
Yes, I would agree.
The dealership was never going to get there themselves. Some of them would, but in the norm, no.
Yeah.
So the manufacturers introduced standards that aided the dealers to bring themselves to a higher standard where they can actually generate more business. So for instance, if you take lead management, they're providing leads now on a daily basis that the dealer doesn't have himself.
Yeah.
They encourage the dealers to use showroom systems where they can track the inquiries. So if you lose a salesman,
you can still track it.
You hold on to your prospect. If you take visual health checks, or vehicle health checks, vehicle health checks, the idea there is you actually sell more to the customer.
Yeah, it's all about upselling, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And so, on balance, I think the manufacturers have helped, and I don't think the dealers would achieve the levels of
greatness
without their help.
Yeah.
There is always one interesting debate, which is whose customer is it? Is it the manufacturer's customer, or is it the dealer's customer?
I would like to think the dealers.
Well, I would agree with you. Yeah. At the end of the day, the transaction's carried out between the dealer.
Yeah. But the manufacturer believe they own them.
They do.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, which will change as well. One of the things that we're discussing here on a later date is the data protection, and we'll be running a show on that in the next week or so, and that's something that's going to really affect the dealers, because the dealers are taking all these telephone numbers and all these email addresses and they're going great and they're pushing everyone to do them. They're doing nothing with them, and if they don't do something before March kicks in, they've lost them, and if they're fined, it's 2% of their national turnover as well.
Yeah, it's a scary thought, and I think what will happen is dealers will be forced to be a lot more astute than they are in keeping their databases tidy, making sure that they get consent as opposed to assume consent.
There was a question that we had on here a couple of weeks ago, and the argument who gets fined. And this is why we're doing the show now in a couple of weeks, is because the debate was, well, both. So the dealer will get fined and whoever is storing their data can get fined as well. So that's something that people are sort of going, well, okay, let's really look at this, because the Data Protection Office, there was two or three people in it. They've now 20 people in it.
Oh no, it's serious now, Joe.
It is serious,
right?
yeah.
And I mean, for instance, you can come slightly paranoid about this as well. At the end of the day, what do you got to do? You got to make sure you keep your database
Perfect,
tidy.
yeah.
You got to make sure you get consent. You got to manage your staff better than you've been doing to date.
Correct.
So that they're not accessing data that they shouldn't be accessing. And I think if you just follow those guidelines and don't panic, you should be able to manage GDPR. Bear in mind, a lot of that is there already.
It is, yeah. It's like with ourselves, we specialise in helping companies with their email marketing online, and these are one of the things that we're checking with dealers as well, getting them to tick the boxes. We have a couple of minutes left, so I just want to fly through a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is, what's the future, do you think, for the automotive industry with Brexit?
Interesting, because I mean, if you look at this year, there was 130,000 new cars sold this year in Ireland, right? On top of that, there was 90,000 imports, and that has come up big time over the last year because of sterling.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now, if you ask me, because we have an operation in the UK, sterling is going to continue to be weak. So this problem is going to be there for the next 3 years, if you ask me. And the other thing to remember is there's more margin in used cars than there are
Correct.
on new
Yeah,
cars.
definitely. Yeah.
And there's less standards required. So you're going to see a lot of more used cars being set up by the existing franchise dealers. Maybe not necessarily under the same roof.
I think there was a shortage of used cars when we really hit in the downturn of the recession as well, those years. So that's, I think they're filling the gap on it. But yeah, you're right.
But it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
You won't generate used cars unless you sell new ones. So it's interesting.
It's a bottleneck, isn't it? all the time. And then talking about cars, electric cars.
Yes.
Have you looked into
I
it,
love
the future?
cars.
Yes.
The electric cars don't excite me, right?
Yeah.
That's just a personal note.
Yes.
But what I would say is this: bear in mind, electric cars arrive here tomorrow. You still have to service them. You still will have an engine. You will still have a gearbox. You will still have brake systems, etc. So it's just a different car.
Okay. And driverless cars. Do you think?
It's a sad day, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I always believed with driverless cars it'll change the automotive industry. The one reason we won't have car crashes because everybody will be in a driverless car at traffic lights. Taxi drivers will be, people probably won't buy cars because they can ring up and say, I want a driverless car for one person, or I want it for 4 people. So that's going to affect the car sales. Taxi drivers won't be needed. Trucks drivers possibly won't be. So if it is happening, it's going to be very scary for the automotive industry.
It's certainly exposed to a big change from that point of view, right? But at the end of the day, you still need to buy a car somewhere. I don't know if people are going to always buy their cars over the internet. I'm not convinced that somebody's going to do that without seeing the car.
No, they do the research before, but they'll go into a dealer.
They'll have to still be able to see the car, right?
Yeah.
And as I said to you earlier, they'll still have to service the car. And on top of that, there'll be parts required for it as well. So it will change. I wouldn't predict what way it'll go.
When do you think it will happen? 10 years down the road?
The electric cars?
No, not electric, the driverless cars.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Do you think it'll be 20 years down the road? Will it be in our lifetime?
Oh, I would say so.
Yeah.
Well, that's the base I'm going to live on for another while, Joe. Right?
Yes. You're looking 21 again. Ray, we're coming to the end. I just want to ask you a question which I ask everyone that comes on. Best business advice that you've ever received?
Make a decision.
Make a decision. Okay. Elaborate on that.
Well, it's too easy to sit down and
procrastinate.
Yeah. You need to sit down and weigh it up quickly and make a decision. And if you make the wrong decision, live with it and deal with it later. Yeah,
once a decision is made, you move forward on it. Yeah, it's good advice. And what song would you like us to play out with?
Oh, Annie Van Morrison.
Annie Van Morrison.
were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Yeah, the bonnie boat was one as we sail into the mystic. Oh, I can now hear the sailors cry, smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. And where that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear that I wanna rock your gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. Yeah, magnificently we will fold.
This show was sponsored by Harris Myers, your sales and marketing agency, helping you develop a better sales and marketing pipeline.